Questions?
I would like to start us off with a question. And just before we do, I'll remind people that the PowerPoints will be up on our Brookings Mountain West website, as will the video. So if you want to make reference or have other people take a look, they'll be available soon. Sir?
Rob, I saw the figure $7 billion for the
Yeah.
Phoenix's system.
Yeah.
How did they fund that?
They did a land survey along the length of the track and determined what was the projected amount of investment. And so it added up all the multifamily, it added up all the facilities, everything along the line. And it included remaking, some structures were remade.
What was the source of the funds for the
Mostly private. So here's what happened, and remember too, I mean, part of what you pay for these systems is that you can say an increment of the improvement is now an increased tax, and it could be as much as a quarter of the system. So you did this in Washington, D.C. at the Tyson's Corner build out as well. So most investment around light rail is private. And one of the reasons that you're incented to invest around light rail is it's permanent. You know that if somebody's taking the trouble to put a rail line and station in, that station will be there for decades. You know, there's great shots, by the way, in downtown Salt Lake City where they show like 1901, 2001, and it's the same intersection. And one is they're building it twice. They're building the same intersection with rail that they built because they tore it out in the mid-20th century. Barring that, I don't think we're going to tear this stuff out again. So what it does is a signal. It's a signal that says invest here if you want to go dense. So per inch, it's higher intensity. And you could actually capture that through taxation, and you could take that as a calculation for paying it. So even because otherwise you're a free rider, you're a beneficiary. If you hold land near this, like if you hold land across the street from this school in Maryland Parkway, and you're a real estate holder, and you own that vast parking lot, that parking lot's more valuable. You know the dead shopping mall up the street, the semi-dead shopping mall, the one that's teetering on the edge, Boulevard? Boulevard's more valuable for the parking lot if you build a rail. That's what happens. Because the proximity to the rail means you have access to a system. And remember, the rail here goes somewhere. It goes to an airport to which you could fly nonstop throughout almost all the United States and a lot of the world. And it goes to all these other assets within the city that are fun. So it's not like, why would no one wants to go there. People do want to go there. So that's where it came from. They self-report.
So Rob, what do you see as some of the key things that either need to happen in the local community or the local community could do for itself to support and push these kind of things forward?
Well, you notice I didn't talk about paying for it. And that's always like, how are you going to pay for it? And what we're going to do later in the spring is Rob Puentes from Brookings in DC will come out in March and speak to the idea of how people are getting this paid for. So, one of the things is creative finance. Now, the good news is in DC, they passed a new transportation bill, luckily, and they added money for this kind of investment. And you can pay for it partly by federal sources. We can pay for it out of tax increment finance. We can find ways of capturing some share of various forms of taxation that typically are related to tourism that they've done in, for example, Phoenix. The good news is for us, and I believe this is a truthful calculation, RTC estimates that the fare box itself in the heart of the Strip does 125% of operating. Let me tell you what a sweet spot that is. When a lot of these systems get developed, they have to find two sources of revenue. One, the capital costs, and two, how do you pay the subsidy because the operating never matches? We don't have to do the second. In fact, we're going to be so successful because so many people want to go from that airport to that Strip, because it's not abstract. I'm making this up, There's this giant airport and there's this giant Strip, and they want to go from that airport to that Strip, and we charge them. What you could do is then subsidize the costs for workers through the hotels and reduce some of the congestion from workforce by picking that up as well. We're in a virtuous position of allowing some share of the transit use by tourists to offset local costs for access for passengers that are using it for workaday stuff. And that would encourage the use of it then. And that means we have one challenge, the capital costs. And we have a government that luckily decided not to get out of this business. And we have a message from the head of the transportation department, the Secretary of Transportation, who himself was an influential figure in light rail because he was the mayor of Charlotte. He gets it. He's a mayor. Mayors are great when they're department heads. You don't have to explain to them what's happening in cities. They know. He is a font of wisdom on this, and he turned to us and said, I get moving on this pretty quickly. Because someday they may decide not to do this anymore. And then we're deeper in the hole. And so, the other sources, we have so many sources of tourist income. We have sources that even potentially we could use, and I'll say this and I'll regret saying it. Some of the money that's intended for the land sales, the exchange that we have with the BLM, is for the purpose of preservation of land. One of the greatest land preservers, and I didn't go into the environmental analysis here, is that if you build a high quality transit system through your core, you deflect some share of housing that would have gone to the periphery that would have been on that land. So we're asking the BLM for less land. We're cutting into Red Rocks Canyon Preserve less. We're less pressure on the McDowell Mountains, less pressure north. And we're building a more compact region, and we might be able to argue, and we only have to do this at the Southern Nevada Land Office, that as a proxy for the preservation, we could actually show in a model, here's what light rail will have in housing, here's how many occupants there'll be, here's the equivalent of that in peripheral growth in multifamily and single family detached, here's how much land would be consumed by it, therefore, that's how much land we think we preserved, please send the money over. If we have resources like that, then we have more resources to build the thing. Yes?
But the,
Quick question now here.
but the
Take
law-
away.
But the law
Let's just get
for
to the question.
SNPLMA doesn't allow, the law for SNPLMA at this time, unless Congress changes the law, doesn't allow that type of.
The interpretation of the law, from what I understand, is actually at the BLM office in the South. And here's what you can do. It's called transfer of development rights. So New Jersey has a whole regime built in the New Jersey State Master Plan of 1992 that said that if you deflect development to Newark, New Jersey, and you take it off the Appalachian Highlands, you can transfer these kinds of resources to it because it's land preserving. So in other words, the decision, I believe, and we could get into this and we could lawyer up on these kinds of things, but the decision is this. I think if everybody in this valley came together, if you had the mayor of North Las Vegas who thinks it's going to get built past his downtown, you have the mayor of Henderson who thinks it's going to go to their downtown, you have the mayor of Las Vegas cheerleading it, you have the county commission, and you all show up at this office and you say, here is a credible method to determine that the greatest preservation of nature and land in this region ever would be the construction of a system that secures and fortifies core development, and here is a mathematical calculation that is based on the experience of multiple states that have used transfer of development rights, which is not a sexy instrument in New Jersey or the East. And they have this estimate, this is how much housing we think we'll get, this is how much we deflect, and here is how much land we don't need. We believe this is more important as a space conserving effort than any park or preserve we have so far invested in. I mean, they could say no. But the steamroller of multiple jurisdictional cooperation, this is why we need to all be in on this. The simple fact is this. If we cooperate and we all throw in and we agree this is true, and we agree this is the right, and they've done this in every other region, that's the lesson, then I don't think there's any limit to what we can get done as far as the construction of this system or the speed in which it's built. And there is an imperative here, which is that everybody else has already made this decision that competes with us, and they're expanding these systems. So I don't think anybody would begrudge us creative finance. But short of something like that, let's say that's not even true. It's not like we don't have the resources in the rest of our tax regime to do it anyway. It's just an enhancement. All right, one more question, two more questions?
Rob, over here.
I'll go as long as you want. People are probably squirming in the seat looking to get out of here soon.
No,
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
be real quick. I think this is on.
Yep.
Quick question. And you tie into what you just, a key word you just mentioned was creativity. What other cities are doing, how we need to look at things a little differently. How does a couple of concepts tie into what you're talking about today in terms of the infrastructure investments that we're discussing here? Number one, congestion pricing as a way to manage demand, because incentives matter, obviously, and, God forbid, charging for parking at casino garages.
Yes. You could
How
do
does that
those
change?
forms of transfer, and congestion pricing, of course, is used in big cities in Europe, especially like London. And if you want to get to the center of London and you want to use private transportation, there is a cost for doing it. And that cost charge then transfers to other forms of transportation that subsidize non-car users, in other words. So but here's the problem. The entire business model of the Strip assumes this. It's easy to get here. It's easy to park. The owners of these resorts would prefer not to create any significant barrier to somebody's access to the resort. They see this as something facilitating it. What I'd say is this. We have one of not just the largest tourist industries, we have one of the largest taxes on tourist industry. You know, there's a rating of tourist taxation around the country. There's a center that looks at all just tourist taxes at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And I know why it's there, because they're the most expensive. Chicago has the highest tourist taxes. Out of 50 big metros, want to guess who's the least expensive? Orlando. Oh, crap. Want to guess who's 17th? Us. We're already past the midpoint. Now, what I'd say is this. We just have to go to the state capitol and say, if you let us construct these forms of tourist infrastructure, the expansion in the tourist economy and the capture of the taxation over that expansion equals this investment or even exceeds it. So in other words, you could show Carson City, and they do this in Orlando. They go to Tallahassee and they say, indulge us, if you will. We believe that if you allow us to carve out and invest a share of our tourist taxation in tourist infrastructure, that the number of tourists coming will go up significantly to the extent that they will make up for the lost taxes. We'll send you more. The check on our taxes to Tallahassee will be bigger because we fix stuff. They think the check is going to be real big after they complete the maglev to the convention center. So we have that same opportunity with 3/4 of the state's population. We can go to Carson City and say, look, there's models around the country that show that if you build various forms of tourist infrastructure, that the amount of taxation generated by the increased trade in tourism will make up for the fact that you've allowed a bit of a carve out. Here's the good news for us. The amount of retail sales on the strips, all of the sort of generation of taxation, live entertainment. When we expanded live entertainment, we said to Carson City, how much more do you want from us in live entertainment? We'll send it. We didn't at that point then say, we're going to go and expand live entertainment. We're going to capture more of it. But in that capture, we're going to take our share out and we're going to use it to invest in venues for live entertainment, for example, like a stadium. We didn't do that. And that was our fault for not doing that, because what we did in that is we then sent it all out of the region. We transferred the wealth out of the region without capturing it. Orlando is more careful with its portfolio. And in fact, it sees very little opportunity to raise taxes because it's a family values town. Meaning, when they say heads in beds, they mean 3 heads in 1 bed. Because they're all 12 and below. So they're really, the parents are already getting stuck with a doll that cost $8,000 at the park. You're not going to clip them at the airport for the rent-a-car like that. And they got low rent-a-car fees, they got low taxes on beverage, because the city realizes it has limited elasticity. But what it does do is, when they wanted to go after our rodeo, they were going to build that out a live entertainment tax. They think, this is crazy, that I know this is nuts, that the taxes you're generating out of an industry might be invested in the infrastructure that expands that industry. We've never had that attitude. We hardly have any of that investment. So light rail is part of it. So we could say to the casinos, we don't want to mess with your business model. In fact, money that you're now sending to the state, if it were carved out sufficiently, would be enough resource, and we could then end up sending more taxes to the state capitol because we think we're going to get that much more trade out of it. Are you on board? I don't think anybody's going to say no to that. You just have to convince legislators that's true. You have to convince them that proposition works, that they're not going to have a budget shortfall. And Orlando has a better habit and history and cohesion in doing that. And let's face it, Universal and Disney hate each other in LA. They tear at each other. They're in a global fight over content and media. In Central Florida, they love each other. They see themselves as a common agglomeration economy. You're going to hit both parks, and they're cooperative. If we need that kind of cooperation out of our sector, our core sector, and out of the leadership in the city. A couple more questions, maybe? One or two? Sure.
Yeah,
And over there.
years
And you're
ago,
next.
we have-
Yeah.
I worked with companies that were trying to put the same sort of thing in. And the taxi cab drivers fought it tooth and nail. The Las Vegas Review-Journal, in her wisdom, had knocked that too, which I presume you haven't talked to them. Who knows what the management's going to be saying over there. Maybe with...
If one guy likes it now, it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's the case. But the fact
When I understand he likes it.
I just remember the last time the RTC talked about light rail, the editorials that came out of the journal opposing it,
Yeah.
saying go back to typical stretch buses. This will do the trick. And the fact is, I'm just worried that at first everybody thought the monorail running down the strip, connecting everything to the airport was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Within a matter of months, that whole thing turned around. So who do you anticipate is going to be the opposition to this? Are the cab drivers going to come out and say you're going to ruin our business?
Uber already got those guys.
Well,
Yeah. I'd say this. Let me give you my own arc. So January 2010, I moved here. And I started talking, fool I am, I started talking light rail. And some of the leadership in the city's like, oh, listen, if you go on stage, do us a favor. Don't mention light rail. Now, I think that I've seen a change. I don't think Tina's upset that I'm talking about light rail right now, because you're allowed to talk about light rail now. This is the difference. How many more cities have to get this? Maybe if Reno gets it, we'll get light rail. How many more cities? I'm going to support Reno light rail now.
They're working on it.
I know they are. And they brought Chris Nelson in, and I know the consultant guy was my colleague at Virginia Tech. Part of the problem is it's a limited universe of people that are expert in this, and I know plenty of them, so I know where there's anticipated expansion of these kinds of systems. And, and Nelson's also done some analysis for us on the, he's an expert out of the Washington Metro. We did all this work for VDOT in Virginia on the tax increment finance off of Tyson's Corner. I can see these systems emerging in smaller and smaller markets. The mayor of Boise was once on the rail with me in Salt Lake City with former Mayor Becker, and we went out to the airport on this little doohickey that tested track, and Boise's saying we need it. And when Boise, look, Tucson got it. Tucson has a streetcar. So I don't know how many more of these we need to see. And here's the kicker: it would never work better than here. That's when it went in, everybody would claim they were the figure that, thank God I pushed this thing, because it's going to work so well. And I say that because it's mathematical to me. There's a part of it that's design, there's a part of it that's, funky people hanging out and having fun on the train and all that stuff that I just showed you. And then there's a part that's just straight up math. I believe the RTC's numbers are correct, that a fare box would be that generative. Because I know what it's like when you relieve congestion and you provide alternative in a corridor that has that kind of popularity. And we're growing more tourists. So what do we have to get to 50 million before we realize we can't go another inch? We are going, and this is the most important thing, the state's core economy is tourism. No matter what we do with Faraday or Tesla or technology, those are all supplemental, they're great, let's do them. I'm a big supporter of that. I'm a big supporter of expanding our healthcare, all that. But the bottom line is this. What got us to this dance? What took a state that was a Dakota or below, that was half the size of Wyoming in 1940, that was the smallest state in population until 1960, thank God Alaska entered the Union, and made it a 3 million, you were there, and then made it a Kansas size, a Mississippi size, a 2 million plus metro, a 30th ranked metro in the United States? Tourism. And what's the vulnerability? Friction, movement, congestion. And what haven't we built? This stuff. And who's building it? Our chief competitors. Atlanta wants all this too. Chicago's saying they're going to revisit convention trade, and this has been so good for us. The events economy was more resilient to discretionary tourism in the downturn. People would say, hey, I don't think I can go to Vegas because I checked the bank account, there's nothing in it. But I'm going to that rodeo, and I'm going to that consumer electronics show because it's in my business and I have to go. And we programmed in enough events to sustain this city through those darkest days. And we need to build on that. And if we don't build this infrastructure, it isn't going to happen. So I just would say that there's no greater city at risk for the lack of this capacity than ours. And we need to be forthright and say that. And I believe that in my heart, that's true. And there are cities that just got it as an enhancement. Could Salt Lake City still be Salt Lake City without it? Yeah. It wouldn't be as nice a city. It wouldn't be as open to sort of alternate housing and different kinds of industries and millennials and all that, but it would still be okay. Ours is facing a real crisis. All right, one more question up there, and then that's it. I see the time's running out.
It's kind of a twofer, but the first one is, would it be better to have this operated publicly rather than as a private system? I've heard discussion about doing it privately like we did with the monorail, and it seems there were some real problems with that by allowing a company to make those decisions that seem to be in the best interest of the community. And the second would be, would it be a mistake not to do it all at once, to go to North Las Vegas, Henderson, and all the resort corridor and business corridor, or would it be better to build in that area and then try to go to Henderson and try to go to North Las Vegas later? But then back to question one, if you leave that to private enterprise, are they suddenly going to be very profitable? And they say, well, why would we want to go out to the suburbs when that's going to cut into our fare box revenue?
It should be public, and it should use funds generated through the public capture of taxation and tax increment and all that. And it should be staged. And the first thing you should do is just build the core of the system. So if it doesn't get to these places, this is what I'd say to the mayors of Henderson and North Las Vegas. We'll get to you. They got to Mesa. Mesa at first was happy just to take a park and ride like a half a mile into the city border. So when I was there in 2006 and I interviewed Keno Hawker, the mayor of Mesa that predated Scott Smith, the most recent mayor who's famous for expanding the metro, the Valley Metro out to Mesa. This guy wasn't hostile the way Berman was and Gilbert to the light rail, but he wasn't that enthused. He said, you know what, I get what a park and ride is, and I think it's good that our city, it doesn't need to be in downtown. I asked him that point blank. I interviewed this guy in the spring of 2004 and 5, and I lived there in 06, and I finished the book there in 06, and I was talking to these mayors, and they were kind of lukewarm. They were, I get it as a park and ride. I don't think we need our downtown laced with rail. To, several years after that, Scott Smith's entire overriding priority was to get that thing through downtown. And it's going to keep going. So it's going to keep going further east several more miles. So what I'd say is this. I don't think, if you cut a deal with the leadership in North Las Vegas and Henderson, and as rational as those folks are, and they are, and you could talk to somebody like Mayor Lee, who I've talked to about this most recently in North Las Vegas, and he'd like to see, if Apex took off, he'd like to see a sort of ride share with the freight line. But he gets that it would be good for downtown, it would be good for his city. But he also gets that the highest priority is the airport, the convention center, and the strip. That's our bread and butter. If you get that going and it succeeds, I think you're going to be in an immediate turnaround to the expansion of this. And what's going to be interesting is, right now no one's talking about a Western line. No one's talking about Summerlin. No one's talking about, everything right now is the idea that there's a linear structure to the city, that the airport's south, the strip's in the middle, the downtown's north, and there's terminuses in places like Henderson and North Las Vegas. And all of the sort of idea, the flow of Las Vegas is a north-south flow. But meanwhile, we've built these very deluxe and deep, mixed use, multifamily, downtown, downtown Summerlin's not an inconsequential space. What my guess is that build the core, expand to the periphery of the planned periphery in these cities, and you immediately have folks in the West saying, we need a Western line, we need a Western line, we need a Western line. Because every time you see these in other cities, that's exactly what happens. Somebody's always saying, you need a new line. And sometimes they get it, and sometimes they don't. And in this city, I think there could be such success that we're talking about a maturity of this system to mid-21st century that might shock us today, that we become sort of a national model for having built it fast and built it comprehensively. And I'll end on this note, and this is the best news of all. We know where and how this works. And there have been successes and failures. There have been mistakes. There have been undercapacities, and there have been tremendous successes. And we have enough experience in constructing this stuff and enough predicted experience, and here's even the best news. You say, what's the private investment around it? When the first stuff went as light rail in private investment, the real estate investment trusts, the external secondary conduits that channel the Niagara of capital that goes into most high-end real estate development, had no concept of what this was as an investment category. So look at the 90s, they built it. Early part of 2000, there's still a struggle to understand how to create standard, securitized instruments to invest in multifamily at light rails. There's no specialists in it. There's a few emerging, like the Olson Company in Seal Beach, California, loves light rail stops. They built at Fullerton, they built at Orange, and so on. But there's no Niagara of capital. This is what's different now. In the secondary market that finances most of real estate investment in America, there is enough of a track record for analysts to reasonably calculate the investment value of transit access, TOD development, to flow this capital to these projects. So there was a very slow start in some cities because every mom and pop shop was figuring out how to work an interchange, how to work TOD, how to work transit-oriented development. Then enough of it went up with small companies like the Olson Company in Seal Beach that I mentioned, who I worked for in the last part of the decade, looking at these places like Fullerton and Orange and so on. And now what it is that the main capital markets, Wall Street, know how to invest in this. So that means that when Las Vegas, which is a well-traveled city and a well-known city, puts its light rail up, the Niagara of capital to the investments around this stops flow because this whole apparatus now exists. That's the benefit of being late. It really hasn't affected us because what it hasn't done is so far, I don't think it's taken this city off a trajectory to where it would have expanded tourism, and it has successfully expanded tourism. I think if we don't build it now, we're at risk. But when we build it now, we build with the benefit of not just the experience of the actual construction and case analysis that we know how to do it better. It's that when we build it and we turn to investors and say, do you know what this is? They say, know what it is. We actually have a real estate investment tranche and a secondary conduit that's securitized around the idea of certain performance standards of this space. And we're going to get people in every 401k that invest 5% share in REITs into this mix. And you're going to see your space built out quickly. And we will see this built, and we see it built quickly. With that, I thank you.
A field trip. We have the field
A field trip in Denver.
Yeah, field trip
We should stop at the office for the patent office and ask them how happy they are with having moved there.
Just so everybody knows, we are organizing a field trip to visit Denver Union Station and hear from the leaders of their community and their investors who helped build Denver Union Station and the light rail that's going out to the airport. The dates are March 7th and 8th, and if you're interested, just let one of us know. It's a no host. You do have to pay for it.
What?
Yeah, I know. But we have some sponsored dinners and events.
Thanks, Tina. Let me thank you all once more for your attendance and your involvement with us. Come back and see us in March when our colleague Rob Puentes is out here. This is not the end, but only the beginning, and a lot more to do and say. So I'm sure we'll see all of you at many more meetings. Let's get
And the
this done.
video's up, right? We'll put the video up.
Yes,
too.
we'll be sending out, you'll get emails about being able to watch yourselves and reference everything that was said today.
Thank you.